Hello, everyone. Welcome to Breaking the Box Office. I am Jawad, and today I have here Zeph, the writer behind Society, Angel's Tide, and other movies, Transference. You got The Dark Side of Society coming out very soon. Just a very prolific director, writer. Is there any other titles I'm missing? Producer, anything else?
Well, Girl Next was the first one that Crazed House, our company, produced, and then Society was the where I broke through, which we're going to talk about in a minute. That's where I just lucked out. It was like my second script.
Yeah.
Most people write 50 scripts. We'll get into that. And then I co-wrote. I had a partner on that one, and also Bride of Reanimator and Silent Night, Deadly Night 4.
Okay.
Now the thing about that one is Lionsgate, I guess, ended up with the series, and they asked me, how come number 4 gets all the attention? No, I don't mean to. I don't want to brag about myself, but I looked at the camera. I go, well, because of me, the fucked up factor. I said, because I started off, I guess, had a reputation being messed up. So
Before we get into your filmmaking journey, what was life like before then? What was your journey to getting there in the first place?
to be well, I did write. I was like a poet, and I wrote some one act plays. I kind of got the bug for screenwriting from writing plays, from writing dialogue and characters moving around. And had um, I had you know troubles in LA. I mean, it's kind of in that movie Dark Side of Society, so you can see that and understand my background. But I had a lot of traumas and different things, and I felt that I wanted to try write, because when I write, I write. It's therapeutic. It's like the traumas, the things, whatever I need to process, it would come through the writing, and somehow I'd feel. I don't know if I'd feel better, or it just helped me get through, that period. And so in I was in LA, and I had been I had been in hospitals and psychiatric hospitals and things like that because of I don't know, just I didn't do anything. I wasn't in danger. I guess I was a danger to myself, and I was very depressed, and I had traumas, I think, from childhood, whatever things that kind of stopped me, and so I was sent away, so to speak. So I wanted to come back to, and then eventually my therapy was to get out of the hospital and play drums in bands. So I started playing drums in bands, and that was an escape. That helped. That was very therapeutic. And even I didn't care. I started on the country bands, on the definitely the wrong side of the tracks, to the extent where people get shot in the bar, stuff like that. But to me, that was home. I could relate to that.
That was living.
It was real.
Yeah.
It was real. It wasn't this fake. And I've always been an intellectual, always been dealing with the world, and never happy with the setup, and I don't really believe in the setup as being real. And so that's like my first problem. Then I had problems with drugs, and like a lot of people, just had a lot of trauma. And that led to finally having panic attacks. I was trying to, do the right thing. I was trying to straighten up and go by society's rules, get a job, where, I left the drumming. I guess I got frustrated with that back there in the Midwest. So leave the drumming and come out to LA to I get involved in real estate, and put a coat and tie on, all that. I didn't last that long, but I lasted long enough to start having panic attacks. So I had to go to a psychiatrist in Beverly Hills, where he was, which it was the Beverly Hills Phobia Center. And this is the only reason I'm mentioning this, is because it's interesting. It's newsworthy, because the Menendez boys went there. That's their doctor was there, Jerome Oziel, and my doctor worked in that group, Dr. Munjak, and he's since passed away. I don't know the status of Oziel and the rest of them, but they had a clinic. there. So they gave me drugs to cope, Xanax and various drugs, and I couldn't, go out during the day. I
What's
couldn't.
the time period for this?
This would be mid '80s. Went through a divorce, um, and wound up.
Because like even prescription medicine, even in the '80s, is still wildly different than what we have today.
Yeah, no, it was a combinate. It was a combo. It was like Xanax and Tofranil, which was an antidepressant, would be like Zoloft today, and different cocktail. These guys, they didn't believe in talking through anything. Talking seldom fixes anything, too. They just wanted to prescribe. That's how they did psychiatry. So, I did that, and then I mean, I went there, and I was, going through a divorce. I was alone in this house, and I saw an ad for screenwriting that a course, and I'm pretty young. I mean, I'm like a 30-ish. So it's not too late to start. Again, and I took the course. It was in Hollywood, and it was called the Hollywood Scriptwriting Institute, something like that. It was a little seedy building in a little seedy neighborhood in Hollywood, old Hollywood. There's a lot of um, oh, it's not the kind of place you'd want to go park a nice car, put it that way. But they had a little room, and you got in there, and they would play. It was a terrific textbook, and somebody who was a writer, and they had instructors there who were writing, who had stuff produced. So I was stoked. I worried a little bit about, today I would worry about safety, but back then I was younger and, didn't think about it. So I got the bug. Okay. And I used to watch movies. Movies were my whole life. I remember my father when I was, really young, when we were just toddlers, little kids. He had a deal with Fox Studios, so he got this pass that you could go to any theater in LA, and you could cut to the front of the line if you want. You could just show them the pass and then be waved right in. And movies were really big with us kids. I mean, they were like that was the only time I really felt mentally healthy was when I was at that young age, and we would see. I would see. He would take me to, and my brother, who was 2 years younger, he would take us to movies that were above our understanding. Be like taking your daughter to a movie that really she shouldn't. It's and I mean disturbing movies like Billy Budd and some of the James Bond stuff, because I wasn't used to that sort of thing, and war movies especially, a lot of war movies. And then I sort of graduated into the as the '60s came in, and I went with that. I went with drugs. I went with dropping out and turning on and tune in and drop out or whatever it was. And so I really got into music and movies. And back then, my favorite, even in grade school, was Stanley Kubrick. And we're going to talk about him. It was Doctor Strangelove. And I just watched that over and over
I
again.
love that movie.
I couldn't help but watch it over and over again.
It's the perfect movie.
It's just great.
It's perfect. Yeah.
And then a lot of the others, the counterculture movies. I remember, just all of them. And I remember when talking about Kubrick, when Clockwork Orange came out in Westwood, which is in LA. It's like the UCLA town, if you will, in West LA. Very nice. The Bruin Theater, I think, it was rated X, and you couldn't get in unless you were over 18.
Yeah.
And then, of course, 2001, I saw at the Cinerama Dome, which was just everyone there was on LSD. It was like 11 o'clock screening, type of thing. And that was so. Those were fun times, and then of course other filmmakers too. You had the so many that came up from the '60s that really made a name for themselves. I mean, people like Brian De Palma, and people like I'm just thinking about him lately because I was thinking about Carrie. What a great movie Carrie was, and how shocked everyone was, and the style of the '80s. you had all those hairstyles and all that stuff. And then we had oh god, there were just so many. And I did take some classes in film and film appreciation, and I got to see what the academics, academia thought about what their favorite films were when they would usually go for something counterculture like Terry Malick, Days of Heaven or Badlands, which we saw, and then we'd be tested on it, and we have to write a little analysis. And then I was also a reader, so I read a lot of fiction. In those days, people that like movies read a lot of fiction. They read a lot, and a lot of times, like when I meet other screenwriters, they'd be like, "Well, I work in, I'm a graduate of MIT, and I work in aerospace or whatever. I work for NASA, but I want to write a screenplay." There's a lot of brainiacs like that are
Yeah.
just wandering around trying to get involved. And but it went on. I just remember every Wednesday, well, every Friday there'd be a new film that would come out. So I would be there Friday. Alan Parker was another one I remember. And a lot of people, Woody Allen got very controversial, but he had some amazing things to contribute. Francis Ford Coppola, Apocalypse Now, all that. And we were just into that and into Dennis Hopper, big time. He was such a character. Funny thing about Dennis Hopper, I think I was the last one to see him. He was here for the Santa Fe Film Festival just before he died. And I was commenting, and he would look over because I had really long hair at that time, long beard. And, it was like, hey, I'm one of you still. He was shortcut. He had a nice blazer on, no tie, open shirt, but a nice, button down collar and a little goatee. And I thought, I told Trish, I said, this guy looks in great shape, phenomenal. I mean, look at him. And he'd look over at our table and he'd sort of nod like that. And I'd nod back at him. We never got to say, oh, hello. I mean, I'd say I'm not worthy, but never really got to say, hello. I'm kind of shy. I didn't really want to, get into that. But it was interesting how there was this like moment we had of a, acknowledgement. And of course, David Lynch, man, what could you do with it? We used to see Eraserhead and all those movies in the theater, a theater not unlike the Guild Theater, is where I saw Eraserhead over and over again. I said, why did he make those chickens move like that? I just kept asking that question. And of course, I love Lynch's version of Dune and Inland Empire, even all of them, all the things he did. And so that was kind of my prelude to getting involved and then trying my hand at screenwriting. And I was pretty good at it right off the bat. I wrote a screenplay in the class, which got optioned by a guy graduating. He was in the UC, I think the Ray Stark producers program at USC. So people that went to USC can maybe if they remember that. And I forget his name now, but I saw him again at Cannes, and he was selling hundreds and thousands of films. He had like tons of films. He was,
Oh my God.
and I said, you know this guy? Well, there's an actress that was in a film that I was watching. And she goes, oh yeah. And she just leans out the window of this restaurant and just almost strips for him. It was weird. But I said, okay, I guess you guys know each other. And it's pretty wild. So I just but film was it's same with Trish, my wife. She had when we met, things really, kind of gelled because she was like another one of me. There was nothing really wrong with me. I want to say that to the audience. Except I was born into a family that of power and like born into the mafia kind of thing. And they just could not accept my telling them to fuck off and my kind of my attitude toward power, toward bullies, really, but toward power, toward warmongers, which is very much warmongering spirit, which I'm very much. I just hate war, and I'd love to see peace everywhere and everyone, but we're not at peace. We're all at odds within ourselves, let alone the other guy, our families, our friends. So anyway, they were really, into the military industrial complex and into the whole socialite scene and I guess I was just born the black sheep, the wrong person for that, the wrong fit for that kind of life. So, I mean, you see, I just live in equipment. It's all nice to have equipment and stuff to make things, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's a different life. I prefer. I mean, I remember once we made the movie Transference, and Trish and she was the lead actress in it, and she was great, by the way. And she and I lived amongst we slept there on the set. We had cables running through the bed. We had lights everywhere that you could trip over and stuff like that. And looking back on it, I would have that no other way. But anyway, so I, eventually wound my way out of there, and I guess I just kind of wandered into music and writing, and didn't really fit with business, commerce, socializing. I have a thing. The reason I can write fairly well with characters is because I just can't stand shallowness. You know what I mean? I can't stand insincerity. Even though maybe I'm insincere sometimes, maybe I'm a bit aloof at times, but when I see that, I just get madder than hell,
Yeah.
and I don't know why, but that's what makes me go to the pen. That's what makes me want to put it on screen. I want to get all those foibles. Like that's what I liked about like White Lotus, the series on streaming on cable or whatever it is on what is it on Amazon Prime on Max, one of those. And it's a satire about people that are sort of well-to-do in society who go to a very expensive resort and just how hypocritical they can get. And I love that. And
Yeah.
that's Mike White, the writer there, is brilliant writer, and we really appreciate his work. So I don't know. So that's it. And I was married really in a sense to that. And
So you met Trish before you even really started your filmmaking journey?
no, I started the journey in the 80s. So in 1984, I was in that class.
Mhm.
1986, I ran into Rick Fry, who was my co-writer on Society, but not at first. I wrote the script first, and then I was having kind of a nervous breakdown toward the end of it because it was really pretty heavy. Um, and I even felt that my family, they were going to kill me too. And so there was that paranoia. And then Rick got involved. That was maybe 86.
Okay.
And then we did a bunch of drafts together. The script got some buzz. We took meetings at various people were interested. We also got kicked out of a very prestigious writers workshop that was at MGM. You have to drive on the MGM lot, and it was in Culver City. And we had to drive onto that lot, and we would meet in the producer's office. And what they were doing is really developing scripts with us, a writer's table, like a writer's round table, and plucking the good ones and then, putting them into production. So there was a method to their madness.
Yeah.
And so the leader of the group was this producer, and she very opinionated lady, and she here's something very ironic, very funny. She read the script, and that was it. We had to audition to get into it.
Yeah.
Just Rick and I got in there separately, but then we met up. We were classmates at the Hollywood Scriptwriting Institute. That's where I met him. So that brings that back into view. And then she read that script, and we were kicked out on our heads. Well, when Society, Rick was working with Brian Usna, the famous Brian, and they had a really good, he had one of his scripts called Weird Museum, which was all set up with Saban and whatever was going to go. Then it got cut.
Yeah.
Okay. So Rick handed Brian Society, and Brian, he was completely obsessed with it. And next thing you know, it got funded by mainly Japanese investors, which was another guy that was exec producer, and it got greenlit. And so one of Brian's friends was up in Bend, Oregon, of all places, fishing. And this producer that kicked me and Rick out, she was on the same boat fishing. And she goes, "Well, what are you doing this summer?" "Well, I'm going back down to LA to make a movie, Society." And she turned, according to him, she turned pale as a ghost. She was just couldn't, she just got away from him. That was, she couldn't believe it.
Really?
She could not believe it. And and the fact that it persisted as a cult film for your hardcore cult audiences. I guess, I've been interviewed by a lot of people about Society, and communists think it's got a communist message, and other people, everyone has their own opinion, but it's a satire.
Yeah.
And but it's persisted all the way down to today, and has a shocking ending, which is mainly credited to Screaming Mad George, the artist, and he's the great surreal artist, and Brian, and then the screenplay. So we all collaborated, and then it was banned in the U.S. for a couple of years, which means that distributors wouldn't touch it. Had too much sex, too much perversion, whatever. But the UK did, and they loved it.
Of course, yeah.
It became a big hit there.
Did you send it to France too?
Yeah, it was in France. It was all over the world. But then finally, 2 years later, it did finally come here.
Awesome.
The thing about that is it just persisted.
What cut? What did you cut out of it to be acceptable in the United States?
Nothing. I didn't want anything cut. We would screen it for, a group of people and hand out like little, questionnaires. And I was just not in favor of keeping cutting. So I don't think we really cut much. The shunting thing in the end is still pretty outrageous. It's rubber. If you like rubber, this is your movie. It's wild, but the message I really, believe in. I really like the message of it, and which is basically, I guess, society is corrupt, but uh, but still, it fascinates us.
Yeah.
Just like people when they write about the Royals, they write comedies, and they really slam them, and they love that. It's kind of the same sort of thing, and it's I hear that they're going to restore it to a luxurious 8K or something,
Yeah.
for the 40th anniversary. So that began, and then after that, when that came out, about 1992-ish, it came out in Europe, and then it came out here then. I had That's when I met Trish in 92, and she had graduated from the Academy of Dramatic Arts in Pasadena, which was a pretty big achievement, but then she got crippled. Something happened to her legs, and she couldn't really walk, and she'd been house sitting, and then she was on her recovery. And we met, and I said, "Your face belongs on camera." I just said, "It just pops with it. You take any picture of her, big bump, big head, goes very expressive."
Yeah.
So, we set out, and I said, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna write something, because I was getting jealous. Um, and she was going to these auditions, and she'd tell me about a scene she was in, and I just got that jealousy, like, I better, if I'm gonna make because I was a writer at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been writing, I've been working for people, working for producers. I wrote hundreds of scripts for, like sometimes a weekend, they would hire me to like redo the dialogue, things like that.
Yeah.
Which, especially items, character stuff, usually.
Punch ups, typically stuff like
Punch up, polish.
Yeah.
I'm a nut for polishing. When writers work with me, I tell you, because now I'm in that position where I work with writers, and I'm a stickler for, I want you to read that script and not have anything in the language or punctuation or any of that that's going to get in your way. I want you to not just, say yay or nay after page 10. I have a page 10 rule too. just like Sid Field had. And my 10-page rule is if I don't have you by page 10, I lost you.
Yeah.
In fact, I sometimes will bump it up to page 5, and say you got to kind of grab them like in an action oriented film. It's really page 5.
Yeah.
But in characters, they'll give you a little time to get to, figure out what's going on. And, and so I just say, dashes and dots are lazy writing. I'm like that. I'm like a school teacher. I hate it. But if I see someone use dots, every sentence, every other sentence, or dashes,
Yeah.
dash next line, dash next line,
Yeah.
dash, 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 dot, 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 dash, dash, dash. I can tell you they haven't put the time into it.
Yeah.
They're just slap dashing their way through.
Yeah.
And so there's that. There's a thing about laziness in writing. If you want to be lazy, you can write a novel, but a screenplay is strict disciplinary. It's like working off demerits or something. It's very, very structured, and you give them the way it is today with so many screenplays hitting people's desks. You give them any excuse, they're gone and they're on the next thing. Same thing if you make a film. If you make a film that doesn't work, they look at 5 minutes of it and they're gone. It's not what they're looking for. That's okay, but it's sad when there's a good story there and they leave it because it just doesn't look like all the other professional scripts, if you will.
Yeah.
And polishing takes an extra commitment. You got to, it's more time. You got to go line by line. You got to try to combine lines, make it more efficient, more economical. And then you have to also look at your structure. I mean, do you need that scene right there? Is that going to really, is that leading to the next one, or is that just like at random, or do we care? Do we care is a big part of it. And so I would say my advice would be bleed on the page and then start cleaning it up.
Yeah. So in between Society and Angel's Tide, you meet Trish in 92. You decide I need to write something because if I don't, I'm going to lose her to all these other people.
No. Okay. I've done films with her, kissing and making out with other people. So let's put it this way. I was a writer and I was writing a lot.
Yeah.
But I got jealous because I guess I wanted to get behind the camera. I didn't know, until she went to an audition or two, and got that going again. Until she did that, I didn't even think about it.
You didn't even think about going behind the camera?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I've been I've been interested in photography and interested in acting and interested in all of it. It just seemed like I didn't know how I would get there. So, so I said, okay, I'm writing something we can do. It had to be really low budget. It had to be in a like we could move to LA and move into a house that we could use that house for a landing for office for whatever. And that was that was Angel's Tide. And we got I hired on a producer who got us a free camera package from Panavision. And we also got film stock.
Nice.
And we got a free lighting package. So we got all that stuff. We didn't have we had a generator, some kind of generator. And I had SAG actors and got some good ones. And it was a trip. I also was being challenged because the people that were on the crew felt they had paid their dues. They went to school, they went to film school, and now they're just like pushing around a dolly or stringing up some lights. And they're like, well, they kept trying to test my knowledge. I said, well, this is what I want to do. Oh, I don't think that's going to cut.
No.
No, I want to go this way. No, I don't think, so eventually I prevailed.
Yeah.
But I had to go through an initiation.
Oh, yeah.
And the crew tested me just like a ship. If I was the captain of a ship, they test you. And I think the Angel's Tide speaks for itself, that it survived. People like it, and it's been doing well in these festivals. I'm glad I restored it because it wasn't really finished, and now it is. And I've been really happy with the screenings and it's very humble. It's not a lot of fancy camera work or fancy razzle dazzle. It's just telling the story. Just did.
Before we go too far into Angel's Tide, I did want to mention this one thing to you that I've been thinking about, and I forgot to mention to you that night when I first saw it. Um, First of all, this is one of the greatest '90s movies I've ever seen in my life. I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Um, but also, your film, Angel's Side in general, it's kind of a it exemplifies generational filmmaking. And what I mean by that is sort of just like in the beginning with Trisha's character, when it's revealed that she has a sickness and she's sort of having to like bring this up to her parents and doesn't know how she wants to deal with all of it. That whole segment up until she gets like I believe her apartment and stuff like that, it's very much sort of 70s style filmmaking. And then when you get to the part of Trisha's character in the club and experiencing freedom as a woman and as a single woman in this capitalist society, yeah, it was very 80s. It felt very 80s filmmaking. And then when you got towards the end of the movie, a little bit of spoilers, but when there was like a medical issues, let's just say at the end, with and the dad characters involved and all that stuff, it felt like the existential filmmaking of the 90s, where like the Soviet Union has crumbled, America doesn't really know what to do with itself, and so they came out with a lot of films in the 90s that's just like, what is the meaning of life, what is all of this, and you sort of captured all 3 decades into one film, and it's a quite impressive feat. I just wanted to mention that to you.
Trying wasn't yeah, that's very, very interesting. I love analyzing too the films, but I was a product of the 70s.
Yeah.
And the 80s and the 90s. So it kind of made sense. And then now I've things are also changing. I'm really not happy with the well, we had the Matrix movies in right around the 2000 cusp of time. And the whole idea was to leave the Matrix. But instead of leaving the Matrix, we haven't done that. We were still at war with each other, with everything. And and so I've been questioning myself lately, like, I know how to leave the Matrix. I'll tell you and your audience how you do it. If you live in the now, you've left the Matrix.
I feel that, yeah.
If and just oversimplifying it, because that means maybe unhooking from social media. That means maybe you're changing your patterns. That means maybe you don't. Like I've just realized the folly of politics, that no matter what I think, there's going to be somebody with wanting to kill you because you think that way, So that doesn't lead anywhere. Um, Churches have not been. I haven't found any. I had a Jesus experience, but then I got kicked out of all the churches because I would speak my mind and I would just flow in the way I do it, and so I didn't find any home there. I found no peace, and and then there's the old Buddhist issue, which is unless everybody's enlightened, nobody is. That's where they get stuck, and they had to go from Hinayana Buddhism to Mahayana, and you guys can look that up. That's just a historical thing. But they tried to be more like Christianity, that you'd have a bodhisattva you could pray to, and he or she would save you, something like that. And so that's ridiculous. I just I've gotten to the point where it's I don't know how this is going to manifest film wise, but the gears are grinding. They're grinding regarding the existential problem of life on Earth. So I've kind of I don't know if it's more maturity or more depth in dealing with it, but it's the same kind of thing of characters and dealing with just impossible situations, that we are thrown into. Almost like the Jim Morrison, the Doors song, Riders on the Storm. We're thrown into this world and we have to figure it out. And the doors are all shutting. And so what do we have left? Well, we have the screenplay.
Yeah.
We've got the notebook. We've got friends we can talk to, and it's just trying to keep it simple, in a way. But and then I just finished Transference, which was very 90s, very well, that was the next one after Angel's Tide. So I had gone to a kind of, was able to learn and then apply that learning to the next one, which was really pretty wild. A lot of unlikable characters. And then the next thing is future wise is we're going to go to Italy to do that. There was another screenplay I had written and I kept developing it over the years, but we're going to shoot it in Italy. And so it's kind of part of this progression or whatever. And it's about an LA couple that whose marriage is falling apart, who want to try one more time. So they think that renting a house or getting a house in northern Italy may be just the thing. And of course, it turns into a nightmare. That's not what's going to heal the relationship, but the relationship gets healed based on the problems that happen, including a lot of violence and just a horrible outbreak of horror that goes on. And out of that, there's like you sense a healing. There's no definitive healing because healing. You can proclaim yourself healed one minute, and the next minute you fall apart. So, I mean, I've never really been able to say, "Well, I'm healed," but I'm going through a healing. But I don't know if I'm healed yet. And then sometimes when I say I'm healed, I'm not. And then when I say I'm not healed, I am. And then my friends all tell me I'm fine.
Yeah.
So we're all involved in a mystery. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with these movies. And horror movies wise, I guess I'm a producer on those. Girl Next was a horror movie. It's free on Tubi, and so I encourage people to watch it. It deals with mind control and human trafficking and abducting women, and then turning them into what we call Sophia dolls, and they basically are made to sell to the client.
Right.
But we never know. The client is like a guy in a black SUV that shows up, and who are they? You know what I mean? And the whole thing is like a kind of an underground CIA operation.
Gotcha.
And so these Sophias, so this guy's a mad scientist. And he wants to come up with the ultimate Sophia, but his sister's laughing at him because, dude, it's gone macro. It's no longer micro. It's macro. It's the world now.
Yeah.
Not just one person. So so then, yeah, that was my first film after returning to. I produced it. Larry Wade Carroll directed it, and I also produced The Quantum Devil, which is going to be coming out soon.
So just to clarify, Angel's Tide, this film was technically finished 1994, but it took 30 years to release, right? Because of just various issues, right?
Post production, the fuckers at that fucking sound place fucked me. And they, all I wanted, you heard the dialogue track. The dialogue track sounded pretty great. And every once in a while, there's a little sibilance, and every once in a while, there's a little distortion, a little overmodulation, a little too hot. Like when Diane screams, I guess you're right. She throws the clock. It needs to be worked, and that's what Pro Tools is for.
Yeah.
Okay. So the jerk, he puts a limiter on the whole thing. So every time anyone raises their voice, it's punching down the drama because every one of those spikes is a dramatic moment.
Yeah.
So if there's a program pushing it down all the way along, you mute the drama, you lose the show. So that frustrated me. Then the music was I just hired a guy that was like he lived 3 doors up. I met him. I gave him a chance. I really should have auditioned more people. I really should have asked myself, and I've learned this, hey, what do you want? You exist. You're the director. What do you want? Not what's convenient or what would be cheaper or what kind of sound are you looking for?
Yeah.
And I found I had made, well, that score was, well, it was, it's fine. He was a professional, you know, composer, but it didn't match you know, it wasn't what I wanted. And it wasn't what the film needed. So that got redone by a really great composer that I've collaborated with, and on several things. And then there it was. The movie was there, and then Trish, I said, "I'm sorry, honey. You should have been acknowledged back then." But she and I both got into I don't know, we just hit the wall in L.A. and just had a really, uh, I can't really even explain it. I'd have to write it up, but it got really insane, and we walked away. I guess we felt it was apocalyptic time, and we were going to go away somewhere. And well, anyway, we were brought back. And Trish is, I have a part for her in this next thing, and she's playing a sister of this real bad guy. So that should be kind of fun for her. But when you do a great performance like she did, you want to be acknowledged in the time you did it, and she probably would have wanted. And I'm fine with. When I said that I was jealous, I wasn't blocking her from acting or anything like that. It just meant I needed to. If I really wanted that, I need to do something about it.
Yeah.
That's what it meant to me, not stop Trish from whatever she wants to do.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Trish has been able to do, artistically express herself, and I consider us both to be like two peas in a pod, like we're like two of the same people. You know what I mean? And we see pretty much eye to eye on things, and art wise, she was the one that actually got me back into film after I'd gone, and then she was real happy about it. Being a producer, she didn't need to be out in front of the camera, but she sure looked good back then. I mean, and she was older too. I mean, she was like mid-30s or so and Angels Tide, and almost 40 and Transference. I mean, she looked really good for her age, but she started school later, and I started school later, both around 30 years old. So we had that parallel in common.
Yeah.
I could write. I could have done it at 18.
But you didn't have that life experience. You wouldn't have written the same if you were writing at 18 trying to be a screenwriter.
I don't know what I would have written. God help us. Probably, I mean, I did get embarrassed in some of the things I'd written, but now with 30 years behind me and time to digest it all, I am embarrassed for nothing. I sign off on everything. My signature of approvals on everything on those 2 movies. That doesn't mean I agree with everything when there's a bunch of other people, but these were mine. And I used to hide from them. I used to think I fucked up, and I let other people make me believe that. And then when I got them back out again and polished them up, I'm like, you people just didn't see what I'm seeing. There's nothing wrong with this movie.
Nothing.
But see what can happen, how you can get just turned around, from your goal, your vision, your thing you want to do. And even your editor. I remember my editor, I had these horses on the beach and I filmed them running slow-mo at the camera. And he goes, well, this has nothing to do with anything in the story. And he was wrong. And he cut it. I left it. I just regretted that all my life. So when it came time to restoring the actual picture and transferring it to video, I found an even better shot of horses, shot in France on a 12K red camera, and total professional setup of wild horses, like 4 in the frame, the sea, the water, getting stirred up, you know, the slow beads like slow motion, and these horses with all their and the hoofs going, and I had all that, and even better this time. So I went back to correct that mistake, and to my thrill, I found exactly what I wanted and I paid for I think $500 for the footage,
Oh yeah.
and it's ridiculous, but I mean I feel like I really got something special, and I know that a lot of people aren't looking for that. That's a special slow mo wild horses on beach in France. You know, it doesn't matter if it's France or not, but it's just interesting.
Yeah.
But
And also, you just color it to match the rest of the scene.
we went night for we went evening, not night, but we went evening for day. So we shot in the daytime, and then we brought it down to like we didn't want to bring it down to black as night because then you couldn't see anything. So we had to leave a little bit, you know, like a dusk kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that made me really happy. I mean, that was like I didn't realize that you could wound yourself by doing things other people want you to do that are not in your heart and not in your mind and against your better judgment. And then they become thorns in your side for 30 fucking years. And when you get a chance to redo it, it's like, you know, God forgave me, you know. I've been suffering with this thing forever.
Well,
And
you got to live to see it. You got to live to see people appreciate it. Also,
I, I didn't work at that. I don't even know why that's happening, but I'm going to go with it. I mean, there's a wave to ride, you know, and people are curious about my progression as a artist, filmmaker, whatever. Happy to share it with them, you know, happy to. I've learned a few things about being tougher. I had to develop a thicker skin because, you know, I've done some screenings where like two people were there and they walked out or whatever. There's all kinds of things like industry. You're trying to sell a film to somebody, and you know half the audience leaves, but they don't leave because they don't like you or something. They just leave because it's not for them. But I would take it personally. I want to follow them home. I want to look up their social media. I want to say something, and I've had to learn to not to. I had to, you know, become an adult on that sort of stuff.
I think 30 years later, first of all, it's really funny because now with the advent of like social media and stuff like that, especially for film, there's like social media called like Letterboxd where you review films and give them star ratings and write up reviews and stuff like that. Yeah, and you know, you always get people on there that's giving these, you know, crazy reviews, whatever. But the cool part is like if you ever disagree with somebody else's review, you can look at their profile and look at their top 4 favorite films that they selected and immediately judge them or peg them as a specific type of person.
I'm a scam of like IMDb, the Bezos. First of all, they always give these Bezos films, you know, MGM and Bezos and, you know, the studio films always get an A. You know, they always they pass. And any indie film, they get slammed. And so I understand it's a company town. But they have nothing to worry about from indies because indies don't have the money they have, don't have access to that really top talent, you know, so they have to really work with the talent to bring it up. They don't have the but the good thing about indies is they're going to come up with fresh ideas. You know, there's a lot of films that get remade from an indie source where a studio says, "Hey, and they remake it."
Yeah.
In it's studio quality.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of one right now that was remade. You guys could probably come up with one.
El Mariachi.
Yeah, and yes, it's more polished.
Yeah.
It looks better. The acting is probably better. The camera work is better. The music is better and everything, but it's not. It doesn't fill the soul. It doesn't.
The raw spirit. That raw
feed you right there.
Yeah.
You know. So I'm all for indie film. I'd love to. I just wish we had more money available for indies. You know, just like block. You know, some of this money that Doge has been finding. You know, that'd be great. We could block grant some of that for indies. You know what I mean? And not lining people's pockets or money laundering, but I mean, give a guy $2 million to make a film. Indies don't need 5 million. What they say is above 5 million, there's nothing.
Yeah.
The ideas come from look at the festivals. I see festivals of, like plants talking, like robots, and I see all kinds of stuff that people do. And thank God they're free to do it, because I'm even inspired to do something experimental, coming up here the next, well, I don't have time now, but I mean, eventually, just getting the bug from the indies.
30 years later, you have your film coming out, and it's remastered, all this stuff, and you're putting it through this festival tour. How has the festival tours gone for you?
It's been, well, my partner, Larry Wade Carroll, the producer, director, half of Crazed House, he he said this film would be good for the festival. So I said, they're not going to accept me, and I've got this little chip on my shoulder. I admit it, I've got some problems. But we tried it, and they were very accepting. I said, like with Girl Next, and we got slammed on IMDb, and some people gave us like a 0, and just really crazy. But it's won like 60 awards, that are verified on IMDb that you can see. And I think Film Threat, which was, one of the bigger indie promoting places, they gave us a 9 out of 10 on it.
Yeah.
And that's been a complete revelation. And then when I watched the film with the indie people, what a great audience. They're very serious,
Yeah.
and they're like kind of like collectors in a way. Not collectors are really fanatic.
Yeah.
They're not collectors, but they recognize the true indie spirit, and they're addicted to it. They really want that. They really want freedom of art.
Yeah.
And so I got nothing but good to say. I mean, Angel's Tide's won 20 awards, and Trisha's won a couple of Best Actress. I've won a couple of Best Director. Um, and Dark Side of Society was on the festival. So I don't know what we did with that, but it's won 20 awards too.
Nice.
And so there are audiences out there that are just totally relating, and they're more indie. The guys in the system, the big studio machine, um, I think to please them, it's a matter of looking and sounding like somebody they're familiar with. You're not gonna. I mean, Rick Rubin, the famous music producer, he said he's been my guru for music, for movies, for creation.
Hold on. Sophia.
And whoop, sorry, no problem.
On my chair. There we go.
Okay. Well, anyway, he said, the public doesn't know what it wants, and you have to tell them.
Yeah.
And that I didn't make sense for a long time, but then it did. And I said, if you've done everything you could do in your film, and you and your partners, whoever, you're totally satisfied. It's like, you're ready to give it to God. This is my offering. This is my, whatever. And when you put it out there, when you get to that point, there is no second guessing. Once you get to that point, it's perfect. That who knows what's going to happen with it, but then that's all an artist can do, is just make the best thing you can make.
Yeah.
Then happily give it as an offering.
Yeah.
If it makes money, fantastic. If it doesn't, you got to do something a lot of people don't get to do.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a win-win either way. But I mean, I would prefer not to go bankrupt, but it's a win-win either way. And I'm sitting here after, let's see, 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 7 years. I've been at it again, back for 7 years. No regrets. In fact, appreciation.
So we've got Transference and the Dark Side of Society. So you're back in the saddle again. You've got all these films coming out. How does it feel to be filmmaking at your age now?
What age is
You tell me.
that? I'm 71.
So you've been doing this for 40 years,
Yeah.
4 decades. So since you were 30, yeah, 4 decades.
30 is when I started as a screenwriter.
Yeah.
And then before that, I was a musician and, a on and off mental patient. And I graduated from psychiatrists and, and drugs into screenwriting and that kind of thing. Now I do, well, you can see on the studio here what we do. I have other skills like mastering. So I'll take a soundtrack and master it or remaster it.
Gotcha.
So I could take someone's soundtrack and actually improve it without having to go back and remix.
Just as you are making films into your late age, Kubrick did pretty much all the way up until he went out in 1999. Yeah. I is this just something you're just riding out all the way until you can't anymore? Well, Zeph, we've been here for a while. The only things I want to say is when and where would we be able to watch Angel's Tide? Are you going to have any physical releases of these titles? And where can we watch them? Because you've got
Crazyhouse.com.
so you've got Angel's Tide, you've got Transference, and you've got the Dark Side of Society. Go.
Right. Okay. So May 13, Dark Side of Society. You can also pre-order it from Crazed House. I think you can get a DVD. I'm not sure what exactly you can get, but you can get something. And you can get a t-shirt, I think. Angel's Tide June.
Okay.
Be streaming, and all these things end up streaming for free too, like on Tubi and stuff. So although I'm worth $2.99. Come on, and then okay, so that's Dark Side and Angel's Tide. Then Quantum Devil is going to be coming out soon, anytime now. And then there's Jacob, which was a film that Larry did that broke him into the business with first directing. And Jacob is a horror movie. It's great, and he's re-releasing it, and I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be. It's a little delayed right now, but all these are coming pretty fast from Crazed House. There'll be like 4 or 5 films from Crazed House, and then production-wise, we're doing the Season the Board, the Italian one. We're doing Top Secret one in Arizona. And we have a couple in production that should go. Like we have three kind of where one of the screenplay is not ready yet, but 2 of them we have the script, so we're ready to go.
For Transference, where can we see that? I know you were talking about that project too.
Well, okay, so here's where we are. I just finished. We finished the print. I got to give you a schedule. I can't answer like. Okay, we finished the print, finished the sound.
Got it.
Done the mix.
Sound. Got the mix.
Okay, the women that we use for poster stuff, they're working on it.
Okay.
We have to have that poster.
Okay.
I don't want to release it without the poster.
Fair.
They've done. I don't know where their posters are out there, but some of them, some of these posters like have won awards and stuff that they've done. So we're not doing AI posters. We're using real people, and I'm waiting on them. And then I'm developing a screenplay with a young screenwriter out of LA. And I said, you're going to go to the Zeph Daniel School of Screenwriting now. Are you ready? Are you ready? I'm okay, but I have to be pretty. I've got 2 scripts that I'm shepherding. I got to be careful to help steer these people on the right track, and at the same time, allow them to do their best, not write for me, but just write what they need to write, and not get in the way. It's kind of like parenting. You want to be there. You want them to develop into who they are. But then you want to help too. And so there's that that balance, you know.
Got you.
And that's what's so wrong. A lot of people get on the wrong foot with advice. I remember I wrote a one act play for this theater group, and the guy just jumped in. He goes, "That dialogue sounds like it's from the 1940s." And I think I got so discouraged. I didn't even know if he was criticized. I just was like, the fact that he would, you know, he would just take issue with it.
Yeah.
And then I just didn't write again for another several years.
Yeah.
Now I've learned now that that's not the right way to be. That's me being childish, but you know, there is that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really talented people out there, but they're afraid because they've been criticized or they got an issue there that they need to get beyond.
Right.
And in order to get to create. And God bless the people who finish their screenplays. That's why I asked you guys that night that we screened Angel's Tide. How many out there working on a film? How many have finished their screenplays? You know?
Yeah. Well, Zeph, thank you so much for all of your words of advice and all of these stories. I know you're typically an offline person. Where can we reach out to you through online methods, preferably?
I'm on Facebook as a kind of, I have a podcast, which is my spiritual journey. And that a lot of people might, agree or disagree or hate me or love me. I don't know. But I've done that for a long time, for like 23 years. So I do that, and that's on Substack, but it's not meant to get, it's not, the filmmaking and that are two separate things.
Yeah.
So Facebook is kind of more geared lately toward the filmmaking, trailers, information on what we're doing. You get to meet people I'm working with there. So that's probably the way to go. Instagram, I have a problem with it. There's just something weird about it.
Unfortunately, that's where all the filmmakers are. That and Facebook, of course.
I know.
Yeah.
But some of the content is
you go on there and you stay in the messages tab and you wait for people to contact you, or you contact
the reels, you recommended reels for you. And you'd start seeing a lot of stuff that I didn't know that was legal.
Yeah,
I mean,
you back out of that.
Are they trying to set me up or? So yeah, no, I back out of that. I had to take it off my phone because I didn't want to just wander over there. So, Facebook, and then I was writing a novel on, I'm also a novelist. I've written Glass Backwards and another novel called Lamb, which is kind of like my early Christian walk. And when I say Christian, I don't mean church. I don't mean fellowship of Christian. I don't mean industry. I don't mean business. I totally agree with the Righteous Gemstone show. I mean, I'm on that level. But the other book is called Glass Backwards, and it gets into some stuff in Los Angeles, some really perverse, weird shit. And it's I started writing one about my hospital experience, about hallucinating in the hospital. And I got a few chapters done, but I kind of, I want to go back and finish it. But I felt a heavy block, a heavy blowback. I don't know what I was touching on there, but something.
Well, it's always good to look at it with fresh eyes, later on.
Yeah. So there's a number of things. Anyway, I thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Zeph. I appreciate you. And thank you guys for watching a very special episode of Breaking the Box Office. And we'll see you guys next time.